Hello and welcome to India Reads. We are reading the story of my experiments with truth by Mahatma Gandhi. We are in the second part of the book and have just reached a stage where Gandhi is preparing to go to South Africa. So let's start. Preparing for South Africa. I was no doubt at fault in having gone to that officer, but his impatience and overbearing anger were out of proportion to my mistake. It did not warrant expulsion. I can scarcely have taken up more than 5 minutes of his time, but he simply could not endure my talking. He could have politely asked me to go, but power had intoxicated him to an inordinate event. Later, I came to know that patience was not one of the virtues of this officer. It was usual for him to insult his visitors. The slightest unpleasantness was sure to put the Sahib out. Now, most of my work would naturally be in his court. It was beyond me to conciliate him. I had no desire to curry favour with him. Indeed, having once threatened to proceed against him, I did not like to remain silent. Meanwhile, I began to learn something of the petty politics of the country. Kathiawar, being a conglomeration of small states, naturally had its rich crop of politicians. Petty intrigues between state and intrigues of officers of power were the order of the day. Princes were always at the mercy of others and ready to lend their ears to sycophants. Even the Sahib's peon had to be cajoled, and the Sahib's Sirashtedar was more than his master, as he was his eyes, his ears, and his interpreter. The Shirastedar's will was his law, and his income was always reputed to be more than the Sahib's. This may have been an exaggeration, but he certainly lived beyond his salary. The atmosphere appeared to me to be poisonous, and how to remain unscathed was a perpetual problem for me. I was thoroughly depressed, and my brother clearly saw it. We both felt that if I could secure some job, I should be free of this atmosphere of intrigue. But without intrigue, a ministership or judgeship was out of question, and quarrel with the Sahib stood in the way of my practice. Porbandar was then under administration, and I had some work there in the shape of securing more powers for the prince. I also had to see the administrator in respect of the heavy Vighauti, which is land rent, extracted from the Mers. This officer, though an Indian, was, I found, one better than Sahib in arrogance. He was able, but rights appeared to me to be none the better off for his ability. I succeeded in securing few more powers for the Rana, but hardly any relief for the Mers. It struck me that their cause was not even carefully gone into. So even in this mission, I was comparatively disappointed. I thought justice was not done to my clients, but I had not the means to secure it. At most, I would have appealed to the political agent or to the governor, who would have dismissed the appeal, saying, "We decline to interfere." If there had been any rule or regulation governing such decisions, it would have been something, but here the Sahib's will was law. I was exasperated. In the meantime, a Mehman firm from Porbandar wrote to my brother making the following offer. "We have business in South Africa, ours is a big firm, and we have a big case there in court, our claim being 40,000 pounds. It has been going on for a long time. We have engaged the best of vakils and barristers. If you send your brother here, he would be useful to us and also to himself. He would be able to instruct our counsel better than ourselves, and he would have the advantage of seeing a new part of the world and of making new acquaintances." My brother discussed the proposition with me. I could not clearly make out whether I had simply to instruct the counsel or appear in court. I was tempted. My brother introduced me to the late Said Abdul Karim Javeri, a partner of Dada Abdullah and Co., the firm in question. "It won't be a difficult job," Said assured me. "We have big Europeans as our friends, whose acquaintance you will make. You can be useful to us in the shop. Much of our correspondence is in English, and you can help us in that too. You will, of course, be our guest, and hence will have no expense whatever." "How long do you require my services?" I asked. "And what will be the payment?" "Not more than a year. We would pay you a first-class return fare and a sum of £105, all found." This was hardly going there as a barrister. I was going as a servant of the firm, but I somehow wanted to leave India. There was also the tempting opportunity of seeing a new country and of having the experience. Also, I could send £105 to my brother and help in the expenses of the household. I closed with the offer without any haggling and got ready to go to South Africa. Arrival in Natal. When starting for South Africa, I did not feel the wrench of separation which I had experienced while leaving for England. My mother was no more. I had gained some knowledge of the world and of travel abroad, and going from Rajkot to Bombay was no unusual affair. This time I only felt the pang of parting with my wife. Another baby had been born to us since my return to England. Our love could not yet be called free from lust, but it was gradually getting purer. Since my return from Europe, we had hardly lived very little together, and I had now become her teacher, however indifferent, and helped her to make certain reforms. We both felt the necessity of being more together, if only to continue the reforms, but the attraction of South Africa rendered the separation bearable. We are bound to meet again in a year, I said to her by way of consolation, and left Rajkot for Bombay. Here I was to get my passage through the agent of Dada Abdullah and Co., but no berth was available on the boat. And if I did not sail, then I would be stranded in Bombay. We have tried our best, said the agent, to secure a first class passage, but in vain. Unless you're prepared to go on deck, your meals can be arranged for in the salon. Those were the days of my first class travelling, and how could a barrister travel as a deck passenger? So I refused the offer. I suspected the agent's veracity, for I could not believe that a first class passage was not available. With the agent's consent, I set about securing it myself. I went on board the boat and met the chief officer. He said to me, frankly, we do not have such a rush, but as the Governor General of Mozambique is going by boat, all the berths have engaged. Could you possibly not squeeze me in? I asked. He surveyed me from top to toe and smiled. There is one way, he said. There's an extra berth in my cabin which is usually not available for passengers, but I am prepared to give it to you. I thanked him and got my agent to purchase the passage. In April 1893, I set forth full of zest to try my luck in South Africa. The first port of call was Lamu, which we reached in about 13 days. The captain and I had become great friends by this time. He was fond of playing chess, but he was quite the novice, and he wanted one still more of a beginner for his partner. So he invited me. I had heard a lot about the game, but had never tried my hand at it. Players used to say that this was a game in which there was plenty of scope for exercises of one's intelligence. The captain offered me lessons, but he found me to be a good pupil, and I had unlimited patience. Every time I was a loser, and that made him the more eager to teach me. I liked the game, but never carried my liking beyond the boat or my knowledge beyond the moves of the pieces. At Lamu, the ship remained anchored for about 3 to 4 hours, and I landed to see the port. The captain had also gone ashore, but he warned me that the harbour was treacherous and that I should return in good time. It was a very small place. I went to the post office and was delighted to see Indian clerks there and had a talk with them. I also saw the Africans and tried to acquaint myself with their ways of life, which interested me very much. This took up some time. There were some deck passengers with whom I had made acquaintance and who had landed with the view of cooking their food on shore and having a quiet meal. I now found them preparing to return to the steamer, so we all got into the same boat. The tide was high in the harbour, and our boat had more than its proper load. The high current was so strong that it was impossible to hold the boat to the ladder of the steamer. It would touch the ladder and be drawn again away by the current. The first whistle to start had already gone. I was worried. The captain was witnessing our plight from the bridge. He ordered the steamer to wait for an extra 5 minutes. There was another boat near the ship which a friend hired me for 10 rupees. This boat picked me up from the overloaded one. The ladder had already been raised. I had therefore to be drawn by means of rope, and the steamer started immediately. The other passengers were left behind. I now appreciated the captain's warning. After Lamu, the next port was Mombasa and then Zanzibar. The halt here was a long one, 8 to 10 days, and then we changed to another boat. The captain liked me much, but the liking took an undesirable turn. He invited an English friend and me to accompany him on an outing, and we all went ashore in his boat. I had not the least notion of what the outing meant, and little did the captain know what an ignoramus I was in such matters. We were taken into some Negro women's quarters by a tout. We were each shown into a room. I simply stood there down with shame. Heaven only knows what the poor woman would have thought of me. When the captain called me, I just came out as I had gone in. He saw my innocence. At first, I felt very much ashamed, as I could not think of the thing except horror. The sense of shame wore away, and I thank God that the sight of woman had not moved me in the least. I was disgusted at my weakness and pitied myself for not having the courage to refuse to go into the room. This in my life was the third trial of its kind. Many youth innocent at first must have been drawn into a sin by a false sense of shame. I could claim no credit for having come out unscathed. I could have credit if I had refused to enter the room. I must entirely thank the All Merciful for having saved me. The incident increased my faith in God and taught me to a certain extent to cast off false shame. As we had to remain in the port for a week, I took rooms in the town and saw a good deal by wandering about the neighborhood. Only Malabar can give any idea of the luxuriant vegetation of Zanzibar. I was amazed at the gigantic trees and the size of fruits. The next call was at Mozambique, and thence we reached Natal towards the close of May. Some experiences. The port of Nadal is Durban, also known as Port Nadal. Port of Nadal in Durban, it must be. Abdullah Sheikh was there to receive me. As the ships arrived at the quay, I watched the people coming on board to meet their friends. I observed that the Indians were not held in much respect. I could not fail to notice a sort of snobbishness about the manner in which those who knew Abdullah Sheikh behaved towards him, and it stung me. Abdullah Sheikh had got used to it. Those who looked at me did so with a certain amount of curiosity. My dress marked me out from other Indians. I had a frock coat and a turban, an imitation of the Bengali pagri. I was taken to the firm's quarters and shown into the room set apart for me next to Abdullah Sheikh's. He did not understand me, I could not understand him. He read the papers his brothers had sent through me and felt more puzzled. He had thought his brother had sent him a white elephant. My style of dress and living struck him as being expensive like that of Europeans. There was no particular work then which could be given me. The case was going on in Transvaal. There was no meaning in sending me there immediately, and how far he could trust my abilities and honesty. He would not be in Pretoria to watch me. The defendants were in Pretoria, and for aught he knew, they might bring undue influence to bear on me. And if work in connection with the case in question was not to be interested in to me, what work could I be given to do, as all other work could be done much better by his clerks? The clerks could be brought to book if they did wrong. Could I be, if I also happened to err? So if no work in connection with the case could be given to me, I should have to be kept for nothing. Abdullah Sheikh was practically unlettered, but he had a rich fund of experience. He had an acute intellect and was conscious of it. By practice, he had picked up just sufficient English for conversational purposes, but that served him for carrying on his business, whether it was dealing with bank managers or European merchants or explaining his case to his counsel. The Indians held him in very high esteem. His firm was then the biggest, or at any rate one of the biggest of the Indian firms. With these advantages, he had one disadvantage: he was by nature suspicious. He was proud of Islam and loved to discourse on Islamic philosophy. Though he did not know Arabic, his acquaintance with the Holy Quran and Islamic literature was in general fairly good. Illustrations he had in plenty, always ready at hand. Contact with him gave me a fair amount of practical knowledge of Islam. When we came closer to each other, he had long discussions on religious topics. On the second or the third day of my arrival, he took me to see the Durban court. There he introduced me to several people and seated me next to his attorney. The magistrate kept staring at me and asked me to take off my turban. This I refused to do so and left the court. From there too, there was fighting in store for me. Abdullah Sheikh explained to me why some Indians were required to take off their turbans. Those wearing the Mussalman costume might, he said, keep their turbans on, but other Indians on entering a court had to take theirs off as a rule. I must enter into some details to make this nice distinction intelligible. In the course of these 2 to 3 days, I could see that Indians were divided into different groups. One was that of Mussalman merchants who would call themselves Arabs, the other was that of Hindu, and yet another of Parsi clerks. The Hindu clerks were neither here nor there unless they cast in their lot with the Arabs. The Parsi clerks would call them Persians. These 3 classes had some social relations with one another, but by far the largest class was that composed of Tamil, Telugu and North Indian indentured and free labourers. The indentured labourers were those who went into Natal on an agreement to serve for 5 years and came to be known there as Khidmat Giyas or Girmit. Girmit Giyas or Girmit, which was a corrupt form of English word agreement. The other 3 classes had none but business relations with this class. Englishmen called them coolies, and as a majority of Indians belonged to the labouring class, all Indians were called coolies or Samis. Sami is a Tamil suffix occurring in many Tamil names, but it is nothing else than the Sanskrit Swami, meaning master. Therefore, whenever an Indian resented being addressed as a Sami and had enough wit in him, would try to return the compliment in this wise: "You may call me Sami, but you forget that Sami means a master. I am not your master." Some Englishmen would wince at this, others would get angry, swear at the Indian if there was a chance, and would belabor him for Sami meant for him was nothing better than a term of contempt to interpret it to mean as a master amounted to an insult. I was hence known as a coolie barrister. The merchants were also known as coolie merchants. The original meaning of the word coolie was thus forgotten and it had become a common appellation of all Indians. The Muslim merchant would present this and say, I am not a coolie, I am an Arab or I am a merchant, and the Englishman, if courteous, would apologize to him. The question of wearing the turban had a great importance in this state of things. Being obliged to take one's Indian turban off would be pocketing an insult, so I thought I had better bid goodbye to the Indian turban and begin wearing an English hat, which would save me from the insult and the unpleasant controversy. But Abdullah Said disapproved of the idea. He said, if you do anything of the kind, it will have a very bad effect. It will compromise those insisting on Indian turbans, and an Indian turban sits well on your head. If you wear an English hat, you will pass off for a waiter. That was practical wisdom, patriotism, and a little bit of narrowness in his advice. The wisdom was apparent, and he would have not insisted on an Indian turban except out of patriotism. The slight reference to the waiter betrayed a kind of narrowness. Among the indentured Indians were three classes: Hindus, Muslims, and Christians. The last were the children of the indentured Indians who later became converts to Christianity. Even in 1893, the number was large. They wore the English costume, and majority of them earned their living by service as waiters in hotels. Abdullah Said's criticism of the English hat was with reference to this class. It was considered degrading to serve as a waiter in a hotel. The belief persists even today among many. On the whole, I like Abdullah Said's advice. I wrote to the press about the incident and defended my wearing of the Indian turban in court. The question was very much discussed in papers, which described me as an unwelcome visitor. Thus, the incident gave me an unexpected advertisement in South Africa within a few days of my arrival there. Some supported me while others severely criticized my temerity. My turban stayed with me practically until the end of my stay in South Africa. When and while I left off wearing any headdress at all in South Africa, we shall see later. On the way to Pretoria, I soon came in contact with the Christian Indians living in Durban. The court interpreter, Mr. Paul, was a Roman Catholic. I made his acquaintance, as also that of Subhan Godfrey, then a teacher under a Protestant mission, and father of James Godfrey, who, as a member of the South African deputation, visited India in 1924. Likewise, I met the late Parsi Rustamji and the late Adamji Mia Khan about the same time. All these friends, who up to them had never met each other except on business, came ultimately into close contact, as we shall see later. Whilst I was thus widening the circle of my acquaintance, the firm received a letter from their lawyer saying that the preparation should be made for the case and that Abdullah Said should go to Pretoria himself or send a representative. Abdullah Said gave me this letter to read and asked me if I should go to Pretoria. I can only say after I have understood the case from you, said I. At present, I am at loss to know what I have to do there. He thereupon asked his clerks to explain the case to me. As I began to study the case, I felt as though I ought to begin from the ABC of the subject. During the few days I had in Zanizibar, I had been to the court to see the work there. A Parsi lawyer was examining the witness and asking him questions regarding the credit and debit entries in the accounts book. This was all Greek to me. Bookkeeping I had learned neither at school nor during my stay in England, and the case for which I had come to South Africa was mainly about accounts. Only one who knew accounts could understand and explain it. The clerk went on talking about this debited and that credited, and I felt more and more confused. I did not know what a P note meant. I failed to find the word in the dictionary. I revealed my ignorance to the clerk, and I learned from him that a P note meant a promissory note. I purchased a book on bookkeeping and studied it. This gave me some confidence. I understood the case. I saw that Abdullah Said, who did not know how to keep accounts, had so much practical knowledge that he could solve intricacies of bookkeeping. I told him that I was prepared to go to Pretoria. Where will you put us? asked Said. Wherever you want me to, said I. Then I shall write to a lawyer. He will arrange for your lodgings. I shall also write to my Mayman friends there. But I would not advise you to stay with them. The other party has great influence in Pretoria. Should any one of them manage to read our private correspondence, it might do us much harm. The more you avoid familiarity with them, the better for us. I shall stay wherever your lawyer puts me up. or I shall find out independent lodgings. Pray don't worry, not a soul shall know anything that is confidential between us. But I do intend cultivating the acquaintance of the other party. I would like us to be friends with them. I would try if possible to settle the case out of court. After all, Tayyib said is a relative of yours. Said Tayyib Haji Khan Muhammad was a near relative of Abdullah Said. The mention of this probable settlement somewhat startled Said. I could see. But I had already been there 6 or 7 days in Durban, and now we knew and understood each other. I was no longer the white elephant, so he said, "Yes, I see. There would be nothing better than a settlement out of court, but we are all relatives and know one another very well indeed." Tayyib Said is not a man to consent to a settlement easily. With the slightest unwariness on our part, he would screw up all sorts of things out of us and do us down in the end. So please think twice before you do anything. Don't be anxious about that, said I. I need not talk to Tayyib Said or for that matter to anyone about the case. I would only suggest to him to come to an understanding and to save a lot of unnecessary litigation. On the 7th or 8th day after my arrival, I left Durban. A first class seat was booked for me. It was unusual there to pay 5 shillings extra, but one needed a bedding. Abdullah Said insisted that I book one bedding, but out of obstinacy and pride, and with a view of saving 5 shillings, I declined. Abdullah Said warned me, "Look now, this is a different country from India. Thank God we have enough and to spare. Please do not stint yourself in anything you might need." I thanked him and asked him not to be anxious. The train reached Maritzburg, the capital of Natal, at about 9 p.m. Beddings used to be provided at this station. A railway servant came and asked me if I wanted one. "No," said I have one with me." He went away, but a passenger came next and looked me up and down. He saw that I was a colored man. This disturbed me. Out he went and came in again with 1 or 2 officials. They all kept quiet when one official came to me and said, "Come along, you must go to the van compartment." "But I have a first class ticket," said I. "That does not matter," rejoined the other. "I tell you, you must go to the van compartment." "I tell you, I was permitted to travel in this compartment at Durban, and I insist on going in it." "No, you won't," said the official. "You must leave this compartment or else I shall have to call a police constable to push you out." "Yes, you may. I refuse to get out voluntarily." The constable came. He took me by the hand and pushed me out. My luggage was also taken out. I refused to go to the other compartment, and the train steamed away. I went and sat in the waiting room, keeping my handbag with me and leaving all the other luggage where it was. The railway authorities had taken charge of it. It was winter, and winter in the high regions of South Africa is severely cold, Maritzburg being at a high altitude. The cold was extremely bitter. My overcoat was in the luggage, but I did not dare ask for it, lest I should be insulted again. So I sat and shivered. There was no light in the room. A passenger came in about midnight and possibly wanted to talk to me, but I was not in a mood to talk. I began to think of my duty. Should I fight for my rights or go back to India? Or should I go on to Pretoria without minding the insults and return to India after finishing the case? It would be cowardice to run back to India without fulfilling my obligation. The hardship to which I was subjected and was superficial, only a symptom of a deep disease of color prejudice. I should try, if possible, to root out the disease and suffer hardships in the process. Redress for wrongs I should seek only to the extent that would be necessary for the removal of color prejudice. So I decided to take the next available train to Pretoria. The following morning I sent a long telegram to the general manager of the railway and informed Abdullah Said, who immediately met the general manager. The manager justified the conduct of the railway authorities but informed him that he had already instructed the station master to see that I reached my destination safely. Abdullah Said wired to the Indian merchants in Maritzburg and to friends in other places to meet me and look after me. The merchants came to see me at the station and tried to comfort me by narrating their own hardships and explaining that what had happened to me was nothing unusual. They had also said that Indians traveling first or second class had to expect trouble from the railway officials and white passengers. The day was thus spent in listening to those tales of woe. The evening train arrived. There was a reserved berth for me. I now purchased at Maritzburg the bedding ticket I had refused to book at Durban. The train took me to Charlestown. More hardships. The train reached Charlestown in the morning. There was no railway in those days between Charlestown and Johannesburg, only a stagecoach which halted at Standerton for the night-on route. I possessed a ticket for the coach, which was not cancelled by the break of the journey at Maritzburg for a day. Besides, Abdullah Said had sent a wire to the coach agent at Charlestown. But the agent only needed a pretext for putting me off, so when he discovered me to be a stranger, he said, "Your ticket is cancelled." I gave him the proper reply. The reason at the back of his mind was not want of accommodation but another. Passengers had to be accommodated inside the coach, but I was regarded as holy and looked like a stranger. It would be proper, thought the leader, as the white man in charge of the coach was called, not to seat me with the white passengers. There were seats on either side of the coach box. The leader sat on one of these as a rule. Today he sat inside and gave me his seat. I knew it was sure injustice and an insult, but I thought better to pocket it. I could not have forced myself inside, and if I had raised a protest, the coach might have gone without me. This would have meant the loss of another day, and heaven only knows what would have happened the next day. So much as I fretted within myself, I prudently sat next to the coachman. At about 3 o'clock, the coach entered Parvekov. Now, the leaders desired to sit where I was seated, and he wanted to smoke and possibly have some fresh air. So he took a piece of dirty sackcloth from the driver, spread it on the footboard, and addressing me, said, "Sami, you better sit on this. I want to sit next to the driver." The insult was more than I could bear. In fear and trembling, I said to him, "It was you who seated me here, though I should have been accommodated inside. I put up with this insult, and now that you want to sit outside and smoke, you would have me sit at your feet. I will not do so, and I am prepared to sit inside." As I was struggling through these sentences, the man came down upon me and began heavily to box my ears. He seized me by the arm and tried to drag me down. I clung on to the brass rails of the coach box and was determined to my hold, even at the risk of breaking my breastbones. The passengers were witnessing the scene, the man swearing at me, dragging and belaboring me, and I remaining still. He was strong and I was weak. Some of the passengers were moved to pity and exclaimed, "Man, let him alone. Don't beat him. He's not to be blamed. He's right. If he can't stay here, let him come and sit with us." "No fear," cried the man. But he seemed somewhat crestfallen and stopped beating me. He let go of my arm, swore at me a little more, and asked the Hottentot servant who was sitting on the other side of the coach box to sit on the footboard, took the seat so vacated. The passengers took their seat, and the whistle given, the coach rattled away. My heart was beating fast within my breast, and I was wondering whether I should ever reach my station alive. The man cast an angry look at me now and then, and pointing at his finger at me, growled, "Take care, let me once get to Standerton, and I shall show you what I can do." I sat speechless and prayed to God to help me. At dark, we reached Standerton. I heaved a sigh of relief of seeing some Indian faces. As soon as I got down, these friends said, "We are here to receive you and shall take to Isa Seth's shop. We have a telegram from Dada Abdullah." I was very glad and went to Shade Isa Haji's summer shop. The Shade and his clerks gathered around me. I told them all that I had gone through. They were sorry to hear it and comforted me by relating their own bitter experiences. I wanted to inform the agent of the coach company of the whole affair. So I wrote him a letter narrating everything that had happened and drawing his attention to the threat this man held out. I also asked for an assurance that he would accommodate me with the other passengers inside the coach when we started the next morning. To which the agent replied to the effect, "From Standerton we have a bigger coach with a different man in charge. The man complained of will not be there. The man complained of will not be there tomorrow, and you will have the seat with the other passengers." This somewhat relieved me. I had of course no intention of proceeding against the man who had assaulted me, and so the chapter of the assault closed there. In the morning, Isa Seth's man took me to the coach. I had a good seat and reached Johannesburg quite safely that night. Standerton is a small village and Johannesburg is a big city. Abdullah Seth had wired to Johannesburg also and given me the name and address of Mohammed Qasem Kamruddin's firm there. Their man had come to receive me at the stage, but neither did I see him nor did he recognize me. So I decided to go to a hotel. I knew names of several. Taking a cab, I asked to be driven to the Grand National Hotel. I saw the manager and asked for a room. He eyed me for a moment and politely said, I'm sorry, we are full up," and bade me goodbye. I asked the cabman to drive me to Mohammed Qasim Kamruddin's shop. Here I found Abdul Ghani Seth expecting me, and he gave me a cordial greeting. He had a hearty laugh over the story of my experience in the hotel. "However did you expect to be admitted at a hotel?" he said. "Why not?" I asked. "You will only come to know after you've stayed here for a few days," he said. "Only we can live in a land like this because for making money we do not mind pocketing insults. And here we are." With this he narrated me the story of the hardships of Indians in South Africa. Of Said Abdul Ghani, we shall know more as we proceed. He said, "This country is not for men like you. Look now, you have to go to Pretoria tomorrow. You will have to travel third class. Conditions in the Transvaal are worse than in Natal. First and second class tickets are never issued to Indians. You cannot have made persistent efforts in this direction. We have sent representations, but I confess our men too do not want as a rule to travel first or second. I sent for the railway regulations and read them. There was a loophole. The language of the old Transvaal enactments were not very exact or precise. That of the railway regulations was even less so. I said to State, I wish to go first class, and if I cannot, I prefer to take a cab to Pretoria, only a matter of 37 miles. Said Abdul Ghani drew my attention to the extra time and money that would mean. I'm sorry, but agreed to my proposal to travel first, and accordingly we sent a note to the station master. I mentioned in my note that I was a barrister and that I had always travelled first, and I also stated in the letter that I needed to reach Pretoria as early as possible, that there was no time to wait for a reply. I would receive it in person at the station, and I should expect to get a first class ticket. There was of course a purpose behind asking for the reply in person. I thought if the station master gave me a written reply, he could certainly say no, because that would have given him that he would have his own notion of a coolie barrister. I would therefore appear before him in faultless English dress, talk to him, and probably persuade him to issue a first class ticket. So I went to the station in a frock coat, a necktie, placed a sovereign for my fare at the counter, and asked for a first class ticket. You send me that note, he asked. That is so. I shall be much obliged if you give me the ticket. I must reach Pretoria today. He smiled and, moved to pity, said, I am not a Transvaaler, I am a Hollander. I appreciate your feelings and you have my sympathy. I do not want to give you a ticket on one condition, however, that if the guard should ask you to shift to third class, you will not involve me in the affair, by which I mean that you shall not proceed against the railway company. I wish you a safe journey. I can see that you are a gentleman. With these words, he booked the ticket. I thanked him and gave him the necessary assurance. Said Abdul Ghani had come to see me off at the station. The incident gave him an agreeable surprise. He warned me by saying, I shall be thankful if you reach Pretoria all right. I am afraid the guard will not leave you in peace in first class, and even if he does, the passengers will not. I took my seat in the first class compartment and the train started. At Germiston, the guard came to examine the tickets. He was angry to find me there and signaled me with his finger to go to the third class. I showed him my first class ticket. That does not matter, he said. Remove to the third class. There was only one English passenger in the compartment. He took the guard to task. What do you mean by troubling the gentleman? Don't you see he has a first class ticket? I do not mind in the least his travelling with me. Addressing me, he said, you should make yourself comfortable where you are. The guard muttered, if you want to travel with the coolie, what do I care? And he went away. At about 8 o'clock in the evening, the train reached Pretoria. With this, we shall end the reading for today. What do we have to unpack here? A lot actually. Gandhi ji was only planning to reach South Africa. Okay, he starts this section about talking about the experience that he had with the officer in Rajkot, which was the officer, he was trying to take a favor for his brother who was involved in a case with an officer with whom he had acquaintance in England. The officer did not encourage him and asked him to leave. He did not leave, so the peon asked him to come and leave. Gandhiji saw it as an insult. He tried to write a formal letter he wrote a formal letter to the officer, got a formal reply, and in the whole experience after that, he realized that he has kind of spoiled the relationship with the officer, which effectively meant that he would not be able to practice his work as a professional lawyer in Rajkot, because he had upset a very important English official. Now he decided that he would try Porbandar. In Porbandar there was an Indian official in place. He was able to get some work done, but it was not that great. This was for the royalty in Porbandar. Eventually he realized that there was not much scope for him to grow, and he started looking for opportunities. At that point, an opportunity from South Africa had landed. Now Gandhi obviously would not have liked to go there, because as he understood the scope of the job, it was more like a servant than a lawyer. They needed somebody with a legal background to fight a case there, but but obviously he would not know a lot of things there. He would have to go there and learn. And they also had a team there, so he did not know how it would fit. But the whole package that they offered him, which was £105, and the fact that he would be there as a guest, which meant that he would not have to spend any of the money he earned. They would take all his expenses, attracted him a lot. This was a project for a year, and he felt that the £105 would help his family a lot, so he agreed to take up the offer. He had an interesting experience in the boat rather than the ship to South Africa. The first stop there was Lamu. It took about 13 days to get there, and in those 13 days he had struck a good friendship with the captain. He was not able to get the kind of first class ticket in the ship that he wanted, but he managed to get a good private cabin through his contacts, or rather by going to the shipping company himself. And so he had struck a good friendship with the captain. So when they docked at the first port, which was Lamu, the captain kind of took him out along with another English gentleman for an outing. Now Gandhi did not know what an outing meant to this community, the shipping community. So the captain took him and the English gentleman, and they went to a brothel. All three of them got into the room. Gandhi obviously was not prepared for it, and he was not interested. This again is an experience which Gandhi felt that he escaped just because of the mercy of God. He was tongue-tied. He was ashamed of himself. He was more ashamed of himself for not having said no, and he was not interested in the lady to the least, and he was thankful to God that he did not fall into temptation. When he stepped out, he realized that he had the fact that he did not say no before getting him made him more guilty than. So the fact that he didn't do anything inside did not cleanse him of the fact that he had agreed to go in, and he agreed to go in because he was scared of shame. And this is one big lesson that he had in his understanding, and he promised himself that he would not in the future let this petty shame get in the way of taking decisions, and would not go with the flow. Again, the fact that he did not do anything, he thanks the Almighty, and does not give any credit to himself or self-control. He just feels that at that point of time some kind of divine intervention stopped him from getting lustful. So this is how he kind of understands the situation. While the chapter was over, he goes out to do a bit of shopping, and on his way back he realizes that he is getting a bit late. They all get into a boat, and the boat takes him to the ship. As the boat is going, the time for the steamer had already passed, and he could hear the siren. He was in a boat with other passengers also who were supposed to get on board. Now he, with his contact and one of his friends, got another boat which took him to the steamer very fast, because this was high tide, and he just managed to get on board. So the steamer had already started, but they threw a ladder and he caught onto it, and he had just barely managed to get onto the ship thanks to his friendship with the captain. The other passengers who were also supposed to get into the ship missed out. After this, the next port was Zanzibar. Zanzibar was a lovely port, and he had a good time. Incidentally, I think the incident of the brothel happened in Zanzibar. Yeah, so I'm mixing the two. The important thing in Zanzibar is not this part. The important thing is he enjoyed traveling out. He saw lush greenery, tall trees. He feels that the only other place in India which could be compared to that would be the Malabar area. After that, the next port was Mozambique, and then it was Natal or Durban. Right? So he lands in Durban. He is received by Sheikh Abdullah. He is within a day of interaction with Abdullah, he realizes that Abdullah has seen him as a white elephant, somebody who would have been of no use, but would uh, be very expensive. And this he felt after seeing Gandhi's way of dressing, like an English gentleman, and he felt that uh, this is an expensive barrister who is not going to add any value to my business. It took him about a week's time to start realizing that Gandhi would be able to add value. Again, there was no question of sending Gandhi to the area where the case was going on. Gandhi would be based in Pretoria. The case was happening in Transvaal, if I'm not mistaken. Abdullah Seth would not be based in Pretoria, so it's basically Gandhi was not to be used very well. Gandhi himself was a bit confused on why he came, but yes, the money was good, so why not? Now he gets an opportunity to go to Johannesburg for the case. By this time, since he had already built a rapport with Said Abdullah, Abdullah sends him as a representative. Gandhi promises that if required, he will try and settle the case out of court, because the person with whom they're fighting the case is also a relative of Said Abdullah. Now the main part, which is the travel journey. So he goes. There are two train journeys, and one of them is from a station called Maritzburg. Now in the station of Maritzburg, he has a first class ticket. The uh, the 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 guy in the train, the servant in the train, offers him bedding. He says, I don't want, I've got my own bedding. As he's setting up his bedding, he sees another passenger walking in. This is a Englishman, a white gentleman, and the white gentleman sees him and steps out, and then brings in two more officials. The two officials ask Gandhi to move into third class. Now Gandhi is a little upset by this. He says that there is no way I'm going to move to a third class. I have a first class ticket. I'm going to stay here no matter what, and if anything, you will throw me out. And the police comes in and does exactly that. They throw him out, and they throw his luggage out into the platform. Gandhi is completely insulted. He has never experienced something like this ever before in his life. He is also stunned, and he goes into the waiting room with whatever luggage he has in his hand. All the rest of the luggage, the bedding, everything which was thrown in the platform is lying in the platform as it is. Now this is Maritzburg station, and it is a pretty cold area, because it's somewhere in the hilly regions of South Africa, and it's also winter time. So Gandhi is suffering in the winter on a chilly night. But the insult of what he had gone through, the humiliation of what he had gone through, was what was running in his mind. There's another guy who comes into the waiting room, tries to make conversation. Gandhiji is not interested in it at all. In the morning, obviously, his mind settles down a bit. He obviously gets in touch with Abdullah Seth. Abdullah Seth is embarrassed at the whole situation, and gets his friends from Maritzburg to come and see Gandhi. They come and meet Gandhi, and they start narrating their own experiences, which is basically saying that Indians do get treated this way and it's not unusual. They kind of put him in the night train again that night. So he's basically spent the entire day with the friends of Abdullah Seth, hearing about all their experiences and understanding that Indians go through it. So basically, the night before, the night that he spends in the waiting room, is a revelation for Gandhi, where he wonders, what is he doing here? Should I go back to India, or should I go back to Pretoria? Should I go back to Durban? Should I cancel all this and just return back to my hometown? And then that's when he realizes that, or should I just bear this and continue on towards Pretoria, and then to Transvaal. But through the whole experience, one thing which stands out is that I should do something that more people in my situation do not go through this kind of humiliation. And that's when a kind of spark is set in his mind to do something for people like him who are suffering. All the Indians are referred to as, so there's a section which talks about how Indians are being discriminated. Indians are typically called coolies or Samis. Sami actually comes from the Tamil word Swami, because there are a lot of Tamil, Telugu and North Indian indentured labor. So Indians are of three classes. One is People like Saint Abdullah, who are Musalman Indians who try and associate themselves as Arabs. Then there are the Parsi merchants who kind of call themselves Persians. In between are the Indian indentured laborers who are from South India and some parts of North India. So there's a South Indian word called Swami, which means master, and so that became a derogatory term in South Africa. So all Indians are either called coolies or Swamis as a derogatory term. Now, Gandhi, as he's learning and understanding all these things, realizes that he could easily go back home to India and get back to his life. He could pocket the insult, finish his year, and then go back to India. But what if he stays here and fights against it? So that kind of spark is lit in him. He obviously now the next route from Maritzburg is to a place called Charleston, if I'm not mistaken. From there, he has to take a coach to Johannesburg, because Johannesburg does not have a railway line. Now the coach is again an interesting experience. He's got a proper sitting area inside the coach ticket. First he's told that the ticket was for a day before and therefore is cancelled. He fights his way and says, no, I know that this ticket is valid because I have got the communication. Saint Abdullah is wiring at all different places, is making sure that his travel goes on smoothly. And in the coach he's got a proper coach seating arrangement which is inside, but again the whole racial segregation of it meant that if there are white people sitting inside, he as an Indian coolie cannot be seated inside, and so he is given a place outside where typically a leader sits, and he does a journey out in the cold. Now there's a white guy sitting inside who eventually wants to have a smoke, and he comes out to a place where Gandhi is sitting. What he does is he takes an old rag and he puts it on the floor and asks Gandhi to sit there near his feet while he could sit there and smoke. So Gandhi refuses there, and he gets boxed in his ears. He gets beaten up. So the people inside the coach are like, come on, bring him in if it's required, we are okay with it. But Gandhi refuses. The guy refuses. Gandhi refuses to sit near his feet. Eventually there is another guy who's like the servant there. He sitting on the other side, he moves away and sits at the base, and the guy who beat Gandhi moves there. Now Gandhi is obviously again completely upset. He's wondering how the rest of the journey is going to go. He is supposed to take a last bit of train journey from where are we now? From Johannesburg going back to Transvaal, and the area of Transvaal is obviously a lot more racially segregated than the rest of South Africa. So he's warned well in advance that by the railway company who's offering him this ticket, saying that we do not have any objection of you traveling first class, but we cannot guarantee that you will be allowed to travel first class by the other passengers who will be there, and if the other passengers are not comfortable, then the cops might kick you out. In that case, please do not move a case against us, or please do not hold us responsible. Gandhi anyway picks up his ticket, and this time when he's offered the bedding, he takes the bedding, and he is settling into the first class compartment when the same experience happens, a similar experience happens where the cops come in and they ask him to move to third class. Gandhi refuses. It starts escalating, before which the other passenger says, who's again a man from England, says that, hey, what's the problem? He's got a ticket and he wants to sit here, so why don't you guys just buzz off? They say that, oh, if you want to sit with the coolie, then best of luck to you, and they move out. This in a way is an experience that Gandhi has kind of asserted himself, and it worked out for him. It could have gone any other way, but this time it worked out for him. So this is the kind of experiences that he's had. He eventually reached Transvaal. He met the gentleman he was supposed to meet, and he narrated all the experiences to him, and that's where we've kind of taken a break. So again, it's a very important chapter, and the whole drama of Gandhi being thrown in that railway platform, kind of sparked a revolution in his mind, a spark that was lit inside his mind, ignited into the largest revolution that India had experienced. Eventually, from South Africa, all the experiences that he gained, all the movements that he did, to coming to India, all the experience that he gained and the movements that he did, all started from him wanting to travel first class but being kicked out. So this is therefore a very important chapter and possibly the most dramatic chapter. His experience of sitting in that waiting room in that night and all the thoughts that came into his mind possibly triggered and made him who he turned out to be. So I've enjoyed reading this a lot. We shall continue from here in the next video. Thank you very much, and if you have any suggestions and comments, please put them in the comment section. Thank you. Bye bye.